Okay, are we back in business? I think the next section has to do with SB 669. Moderator, are we back?
Moderator is trying to reconnect.
Okay.
But if Dr. Waterhouse would like to start the presentation, we can continue.
Okay, great. So Dr. Sullivan, should I continue in the same format or do we want to change that?
No, I think you should continue in the same format.
Okay.
We need to go through every question individually.
Okay.
Maybe page at a time like we did. And maybe summarize the answer.
Okay. So for introduction, Senate Bill SB 669 went into effect on January 1st, 2024 and authorizes a veterinarian to allow a registered veterinary technician, an RVT, to act as an agent of the veterinarian for the purpose of establishing the veterinarian client-patient relationship to administer preventative or prophylactic vaccines or medications for the control or eradication of apparent or anticipated internal or external parasites as specified. BNP code 4826.7, 484 sub D, so I should say 4840 sub D, provided below are frequently asked questions the Veterinary Medical Board has received from the public on this new law and answers therein. So number one, does the veterinarian and RVT have to have an agreement in place related to the administration of prophylactic vaccines and deworming agents? Yes, the new law requires the veterinarian and RVT to sign and date a statement that the veterinarian is authorizing the RVT to act as the agent of the veterinarian only to establish the VCPR for purposes of administering preventative or prophylactic vaccines or anti-parasitic medications when acting in compliance with the protocols and procedures established by the veterinarian, and only until the date the veterinarian terminates the authorization. And I'm not going to go through all the BMP codes. The new law also requires the veterinarian and RVT to sign and date a statement containing an assumption of risk by the veterinarian for all acts other than willful acts of animal cruelty, gross negligence, or gross unprofessional conduct of the RVT related to examining the animal patient and administering preventative or prophylactic vaccines or anti-parasitic medications. You want to stop there or keep going?
Why don't you take the next one too?
In a multi-veterinarian facility, which veterinarian signs the statements with the RVT? The veterinarian who is authorizing the RVT to act as the agent of the veterinarian to establish the VCPR, to administer vaccines or anti-parasitic medications, and assumes the risk for all acts, other than willful acts of animal cruelty, gross negligence, or gross unprofessional conduct of the RVT related to examining, administering the vaccines or anti-parasitic medications, is the veterinarian who signs the statement with the RVT. In addition, if the RVT administers vaccines or anti-parasitic medications at the registered veterinary premises, the veterinarian must be physically present at the registered veterinary premises in order for the RVT to administer the vaccines and anti-parasitic medications. If the RVT administers vaccines or anti-parasitic medications at a location other than at registered veterinary premises, the veterinarian must be in the general vicinity or available by telephone and quickly and easily available. Questions?
Okay.
It's Kathy. I just had a quick question, Cheryl. Is there any reason why we can't just on question one start with a yes and then go into the new law requires? Or is that sort of, or does that You want to make sure they read the whole paragraph. I didn't know what the reason was not to.
I didn't write these initial ones. So was there, Jessica and Tara, was there?
Yeah, Dr. Waterhouse,
say-
if you recall, the specific question referred to the term agreement. And I think
Yes.
there was a concern that a lot of people are calling it an agreement, and the statute itself refers to it as a statement. And so that's why we can do a yes or a no. And Tara, you can elaborate if I missed anything, but I think that was the main point. They kept calling it an agreement in the questions that we received, but it was a statement itself.
Okay, whoops. Okay, well, it just seems like it'd be so much simpler for the practitioners if it was a yes, but I see what you're talking about with the difference of the wording. Maybe you could say a statement, parentheses, agreement.
Or just change the question to statement?
Yeah,
This is Tara. It seems like everyone has a misunderstanding about what the requirement is, and they're all calling it an agreement. And in the legal context, an agreement is different than a statement. I understand that both parties have to sign a document with these statements, but there's no agreement really going on here. This is the veterinarian is designating an RVT to perform specified services, and the veterinarian is also assuming all risk for those services being provided by the RVT. So I want to make it clear that this is a statement, not an agreement. So I don't want to just put statement in parens agreement because it's not an agreement.
What's the legal status?
Well, I don't understand the question, the legal status.
Yeah, so does a statement carry certain liabilities?
Well, the statement does, absolutely, because, as provided in the statute, the liability is assumption of risk of the conduct and acts performed by the RVT. An agreement, in my mind, is like a contract. There's an agreement between two parties to do something. There's actually no statement required that the RVT is going to agree to do anything. The veterinarian is just assigning authorization to the RVT, and the veterinarian is assuming all risk for that authorization. That's it. So there's no agreement.
Good, that's very important.
So I guess the question is, can we just change that to a statement? Does the veterinarian and RVT have to have a statement in place?
yeah,
Or a document? So if the answer is yes.
Yeah, I feel like we need to make it, I know, but oh, wait, Tara, you're talking, Tara, you're on mute. Tara, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Do you hear us?
Sarah, we can't hear you.
This is the moderator.
In
and I
practice.
believe there are a number of audio issues going on.
Ah,
Tara is
we missed
not in fact unmuted, but we cannot hear her.
Oh,
Tara, we didn't hear any of that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the profession is calling this an agreement, I believe the question itself is appropriate. And then the response is also appropriate because it changes the term agreement to what's in statute, which is a statement. I believe that we need to spell this out in this way.
I just think, I get it, the difference of the words, but I'm trying to think of the poor veterinarians looking at this.
Yeah, no veterinarian's
Right
gonna
to say
understand.
yes.
So
Uh,
my question would be, would it be beneficial to, in a one-liner, say, this is not an agreement, this is a statement? Cat. An agreement does not equal a statement. Something that is just very simplified for the
Well, we
veterinary.
still have to, I feel like we still have to explain what the statement is, right?
But it could be in this question, within this question. Like within this answer. I'm sorry, I have a very uncooperative cat who's not refusing to leave right now. And he keeps stepping on things and so yeah, but somehow say an agreement does not equal a statement. A statement is what is required. However, an agreement does not equal an agreement.
I think that's gonna be confusing too.
I know,
This
I
long
know.
legal explanation.
This is Diane Sequoia. If you look at questions number 2 and 3, in number 2, it says which veterinarian signs a statement with the RVT. So you're saying statement in number 2. And in question number 3, you're saying sign one document containing the required statement. So you're already using statement in 2 of your 3 questions.
Because
Use
those were
document
written
there.
by us versus the first question was written by an actual person that was their actual question.
Can we use the
Well-
word document?
What you might do
In place of
is
agreement.
put an asterisk by that, and then at the bottom of the document, give an explanation like Tara did for the difference between a document and a statement, because I think
I like that.
difference is important.
I like that. Can we do that?
All right, so this is Tara. I want to clarify 2 and 3 fall after 1, right? So in 1, we're already establishing it's not an agreement, it's a statement. So 2 and 3 make sense from a statement perspective. As far as inserting an asterisk, are you saying to insert that under 2 and 3 after the term statements? Or are you
No.
saying insert that in 1 and then cross our fingers that people will read the end of the document where the asterisk explains the statement that is not an agreement?
I don't know the best way of doing it, but I think your explanation cleared up a lot of confusion, I think, to everybody here. And I think with licensees looking at this for the first time, I think they need to know the difference. And I think it can be done with an asterisk and however you want to do it, so that there is a definition at the end that if they want to follow it and read what it says, they'll have a better understanding.
This is Kathy. I didn't, just because a person asked this exact question, why do we have to use the exact wording of their question? Why can't we just change the question to have a statement in place related to the blah, blah, blah? And so then it's all consistent. You could do the asterisk too, but I forgot that this is because we got a specific question asked this way.
I think what Tara was saying and this is the terminology that people are using and what veterinarians are using. And it's important to recognize that people are calling it, in the profession, are calling it agreement. And so it's important to recognize that it's not an agreement, it's a statement, and the difference between an agreement and a statement. I think that's what we're saying. The concern that I have is if we, and I know Tara understands that by saying agreement in the question and then saying in the answer that it's a statement, that's defining it. However, a person in the profession is going to read that and they're not going to notice the difference. They're not going to say, "Oh, look, they're not going to read that and say that they don't read things that way. They're not an attorney. They don't read it that way, and they cannot understand things, the subtle nuances of that." And people at this table might understand that and they might get it, but they don't do these things that often. They're just reading it and they're going, "Oh, okay, this is the answer and our agreement needs to do that." And they're going to call it that. They're going to continue calling it that. And it may be fine for most people. However, if we want to call it a statement, we need to call it a statement. We need to explain the reason why it's a statement, because that's what the law says. And this is why it is not an agreement. People need to understand the reason why. Teach them why it's not a statement, why it is a statement and not an agreement.
So it sounds
Or
like
else make the word make the question broad enough. So use the word document so that it's broad enough. It covers a lot of things.
I
But
think
make it,
either,
I like
make it
that,
so
and
that
then you
the
could
question
answer
is
yes.
yes. The answer is yes.
so the statute specifically says statement, so I don't think changing it to document is a great idea, but so the committee can change it to statement and leave the law, or leave the response, or perhaps you leave the question and have an opening sentence with "the new law does not require an agreement," and then perhaps specify an agreement is and provide Tara's rationale, and then the new paragraph is "the new law requires the vendor to sign a statement."
I think something like that is good.
So Tara, I'd also like to add that it's not just one statement, it's two statements. The veterinarian has to authorize the RVT, that's one statement. And the second statement is the veterinarian assumes all risk.
So Tara, are you okay with adding in the beginning, the opening sentence would be "the new law does not require an agreement in place"?
Then can you say, but it does require?
Yeah, I think how we need to
We
start
have
what
to
it
make
does
it
require
clear.
with.
Yeah.
Make that first. I think
All
first
right,
we have to say what it does require.
Well,
First.
perhaps the new law does not require an agreement, period, rather.
Yeah, no, it's veterinarians that's going to go right over their head. So I would say the new law does require a statement that the veterinarian and the RVT have signed. Say what it does require. Do the positive thing first.
Jeff,
It's
sorry.
two
So
statements.
Jeff,
Does
so
require two statements.
Jeff, can you take out "the new law does not require an agreement" and then put it at the very end, the last sentence? So start a new paragraph. There.
So if we leave it like that, then you still can't answer just a simple yes before the first paragraph,
Right,
which is what I was trying to get to. Okay.
right. So why can't we just still go ahead and say yes? Because yes, it requires a veterinarian to sign, an RVT to sign a statement.
It sounds like the MDC really just wants to change agreement to statement, because that's the only way to get us to a yes.
It's fine with me.
How about we have a statement there, and then in the first sentence of the answer, we start defining that the new law requires the veterinarian RVT to sign and date 2 statements.
2 statements.
So to clarify, so Jeff, the sentence starts out, yes, period. The new law requires the veterinarian RVT to sign and date 2 statements.
2 statements.
And maybe here we do colon, space, paren 1 and paren, the veterinarian is authorizing the RVT. So strike that. No, you're just striking the word that after 1. Do the members want to strike only to establish the VCPR and all of the rest of that, or and then just insert the second statement requirement? I don't know how detailed you want to be so that people will read this, or make it clear what the authorization is.
So if we could take out the BPC references, all the legal, stuff is in parentheses. Were we going to put those in notes at the bottom? Is what we decided?
It depends on the method of delivery. So we have a couple ways to do the FAQs. If it's in a flyer or electronic document, with all of them, we put the asterisk that we put all the footnotes of the laws at the very end. But when we put it on the website and there's an FAQ, it's just lists the questions, and you click on the question and you get the answer. So putting it there doesn't make sense, but
Okay.
in ways that we can, we will put the footnote at the end for a full document.
Okay. That's, yeah, because that reads easier. Okay, and then, so then the second paragraph would be 2, parentheses 2.
Right. So 1, I think you should drop that down to an indented paragraph. And then 2 also would be indented. So here we're going to strike from the down to after risk by, it's going to say the veterinarian assumes risk. And I need to check the statute real quick. All right, so the veterinarian assumes risk for all acts. That's correct. That look okay? Is that any better for clarity?
Yes, that's much better.
And then just
Now,
strike that
do we
last
still, go ahead.
no longer referring to an agreement.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Sullivan, are you okay now with not talking about agreement versus statement?
Well, reading it for the first time, I would think that a statement, and to me as a layperson, I think a statement that's requiring signatures and dated is the same thing as an agreement. That's why I liked Tara's explanation of the difference, because that made it a lot more clear. But I don't, I'm not going to belabor it. If you
I
want,
think, yeah, I think this is fine.
okay.
Okay, in a multi-veterinarian facility, which veterinarian signs the statement with the RVT? Any questions? Or comments? The important thing here is if you have more than one veterinarian working on a certain day with one RVT that's also administering vaccines and antiparasitic medications, you need to pick one veterinarian who's going to be working with her or him. There needs to be one veterinarian that's assigned that day to be the one that the RVT is giving the information to the client about. It's my understanding.
Does anyone have any questions over that understanding?
So 2 and 3 kind of go together. So in 3, if a veterinary premises has multiple veterinarians and multiple RVTs, can all veterinarians and RVTs sign one document or containing the required statements? Yes, and we discussed this for quite a while, but anyway, what we came down to was, yes, multiple veterinarians and RVTs may sign and date a single document containing the required statements. However, the RVT must inform each client of the specific veterinarian's name and license number for whom the RVT is acting as an agent. If multiple veterinarians sign one document containing the required statements, each veterinarian is required to retain a copy of the document for the duration of each RVT working as the agent of the veterinarian until 3 years from the date of termination of the veterinarian's relationship with the RVT. So again, a couple things here. So if you have multiple veterinarians and say one RVT doing this, as I said before, you need to pick one veterinarian that's going to be the official veterinarian working with the RVT that day. And also that associate veterinarians need to know that if they have signed this agreement and they leave that practice, they need to take that information with them because they are still for 3 years, officially part of that agreement.
Statement.
Sorry, statement. How could I forget?
Yeah, and I think we had this discussion for a bit that it is on, again, the veterinarian's responsibility to carry that statement. That is their statement, that is their piece of paper. And regardless of whether they leave or not, it has to be something that they keep in their possession so that they should have a copy of it. It's not the veterinary hospital, it's them, the agreement with the RVT. So they need to make sure that they have that copy. And I think that's clear in this.
Kathy?
Yeah, I thought I understood this and then until Cheryl just read it now. So if I'm a veterinarian and I leave a practice, so I'm no longer physically at that practice supervising the RVT, either indirectly or directly, that agreement is still in force.
That statement
That
is,
statement still in force with that RVT for 3 more years, even though I'm not around?
So that's, no, they would have to get a new statement. So if they signed it, so say they had multiple veterinarians with that person on it, they would have to sign a new statement that, when we talked about this, they would have to have a new statement that eliminated that veterinarian,
Okay.
that for the doctors that are still existing. But okay, wait, Tara's raising her hand, so I'm gonna defer to her. But that doctor is still responsible for carrying that statement for 3 years, because until that relationship would be, just so it's on record. But they don't have that statement anymore. They don't have that relationship anymore. There's no reporting relationship anymore.
And no
Because
liability.
that RVT can't go into the room and represent that veterinarian any longer. They can no longer say to that client, I'm acting as an agent of this veterinarian.
Tara,
So, I think a veterinarian who leaves the practice should do another statement that removes authorization or terminates authorization for the RVTs for whom they have previously authorized. That's the cleanest way for veterinarians to deal with the situation. So, one, the veterinarian has a copy of the document with all the multiple names on it. And two, when the veterinarian is leaving the practice, they sign and date an additional document that terminates the authorization for all of the RVTs at that practice. So, and then they keep a copy of that termination as well. That's the best way for veterinarians to do this. And this authorization termination provision is under subdivision B5. I don't know if you want to add that. But, you know, if they're signing one document with a bunch of names and one person leaves, that person should execute an additional statement terminating authorization.
I think we should put that in specifically, but I think the reason when they need to keep that for 3 years, correct me if I'm wrong, is because they are the ones responsible for anything that happens under that RVT with those few exceptions. And so if there's a complaint filed within 3 years, they're still officially part of that agreement. Sorry, statement.
The statute itself requires that 3-year retention.
Yes.
It just flat out requires the retention of the document.
Yeah, and it is written until the date the veterinarian terminates authorization for the registered veterinary technician to act as the agent. So I think that's what needs to go in there.
what I would suggest is that, because we're going to have another look at this at our next meeting, I assume, or not. I thought what we could do is have staff go ahead and add that language and then review it at the next meeting. Is that agreeable?
Agreeable with me. Everybody else okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Tara, you still have your hand up?
Yes.
You okay,
I'm
Tara?
actually just typing, I was typing out some termination language. So, and Dr. Sullivan, when you say next meeting, are you saying this gets passed to the board and we are adding the termination language before it gets to the board?
Well, I was hoping to be able to do it at our meeting and then pass it on to the board, like we have done in the past.
I know there's a real desire to get these FAQs posted as quickly as possible, and I don't know if that's going to delay posting. But I just sent a statement for staff, and perhaps we could just drop that in real quick.
Sounds good. I thought you might need some more time with it.
Just a general question. can we put FAQs up and then change them as we go along, as things change, as things become more defined?
So a couple things. Yes, the board, we're not required to run every piece of outreach through the board, but because of the controversy and the confusion surrounding this issue, we had asked for assistance from the MDC and the board, similar to what we did with our VCPR FAQs. As far as the delay in getting it posted, the decision was made to wait until the board can review them to post the questions, the FAQs. So if the MDC, whatever they approved today would still be delayed until the board can vote on them.
Okay. We ready to move on to full?
Any comments?
Is this language okay?
Sarah added? Looks good to me.
I'm sorry, was there a comment? Should we move on to 4?
Yes.
Okay. Does written protocols and procedures established by the veterinarian mean that the veterinarian needs to write them, or can a veterinarian adopt a template set of protocols and procedures made by someone else? The new law does not specify the veterinarian must create the written protocols and procedures utilized by the RVT. However, veterinarians adopting a template set of protocols and procedures must ensure that the written protocols and procedures include vaccination protocols and preventative procedures for parasite control for each animal species being administered vaccines and antiparasitic medications by the RVT. I think I'll go ahead. Who is responsible for entering the animal patient documentation into the medical record? The veterinarian or the RVT? Both. The RVT is responsible for documenting the animal patient information in the medical record. And then there's a lot of code there. The new statute requires that the RVT to comply with all requirements, including documentation of specified animal patient information to serve as the veterinarian's agent and establish the VCPR. If the RVT fails to document the animal patient information and subsequently administers vaccines or antiparasitic medication to the animal patient, the RVT would not have satisfied the requirements to act as an agent of the veterinarian to establish the VCPR. If the VC requirements are not satisfied, the default VCPR requirements under BP section 4826.6 would control, and RVT administering any treatment without the veterinarian establishing the VCPR would be acting outside the scope of the RVT's registration, engaging in unlicensed practice of veterinary medicine. The veterinarian is also responsible for ensuring all requirements listed in the BP section 4826.7 are satisfied. If the RVT did not satisfy the VCPR agent requirements, including documenting the required patient information, the veterinarian could be disciplined for, among other things, aiding and abetting unlicensed practice of veterinary medicine by the RVT and violating the documentation retention requirements. I'll go on to 6 because it's kind of related. If the medical records from an RVT appointment are insufficient, where does the responsibility lie? Both the veterinarian and RVT are responsible for ensuring compliance with the law. The RVT is required to document specified information. The veterinarian assumes the risk for the act of the RVT. Any comments?
Kathy?
Just a quick one on number 5, the last paragraph, where it says the veterinarian could be disciplined. The RVT could also be disciplined, I assume, right?
Yes. That's kind of in the paragraph before that, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? I do not see any, so let's open it up for public comment, please.
And this is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, then type the word comment in the text box and send. or you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. We do have 2 requests for comment. The first is from Nancy Ehrlich. Nancy, I'm going to send you a request to unmute and you'll have 2 minutes. You're unmuted.
Okay, my comment is very simple. Under question number 1, it says, does the veterinarian and RVT have to have? And it should say, do the veterinarian and RVT have to have? A grammatical correction.
And was that your only comment?
That was it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And our next request for comment is from Grant Miller. Grant, I've sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
All right, thank you. So regarding that question number 1, I'm wondering if we can just go back to that word statement and consider saying an authorization statement, because if you look at the actual law, at the language of SB 669 under B5, it says the veterinarian and the registered veterinary technician sign and date a statement containing authorization. And then throughout, it is referred to that way in the other few places that it's referred to. So I'm kind of with Cheryl, and I'm with Dr. Waterhouse and Dr. Sullivan in that the profession is not going to, they're going to see this as there must be some kind of a signed agreement that has to be here. So the statement may end up being confusing to them, but if they see that it's an authorization statement, I think that'll be a lot more clear to them. So that was comment number 1. And I also wanted to comment on I'll hold my comments until the next period. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I do not see any further requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, moving on. 7, does a veterinarian still have to be present at a vaccination clinic? If the vaccination clinic is held at the registered veterinary premises, the veterinarian must be physically present at the registered veterinary premises while the RVT administers the vaccines or antiparasitic medications. If the vaccination clinic is held at a location other than the registered veterinary premises, the veterinarian must be in the general vicinity or available by telephone and quickly and easily available. You want to stop there, or then we go into rabies again? I'll go on. Can an RVT establish a VCPR for rabies vaccination? The new laws authorize an RVT as an agent of the veterinarian to establish a VCPR for the purpose of the RVT administering preventative or prophylactic vaccines and do not otherwise specify exemptions from authority. However, pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 121695, there may be local and city and county ordinances regarding rabies vaccines that require veterinarian participation or more stringent requirements for the health and safety of the public in those jurisdictions. In addition, RVTs are required to comply with all federal and state statutes, rules, and regulations pertaining to dangerous drugs or controlled substances. Failure to do so could result in discipline. Rabies control also is regulated and enforced by the California Department of Public Health in accordance with the HSC and supporting regulations. Veterinary professionals are encouraged to review the rabies vaccination requirements under the HSC, as well as the local city and county ordinances for additional rabies vaccination requirement. The board also notes that in the event a canine animal patient is precluded from the administration of a rabies vaccine, only the veterinarian can make a determination that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life due to disease or other considerations that the veterinarian can verify and document. So when we were talking about this at our meeting, essentially the answer to can an RVT establish a VCPR for rabies vaccination, the answer was it depends. And we couldn't, and Dick seemed to have more solid answers on that than anything I've heard. So I'm still not sure what to make about that.
I'm not either. I'm more confused now. Because we do have city and local jurisdictions mandates to do low-cost rabies vaccinations. So I think, you know, there's, I think that falls under our vaccination regulations, whereas this is a different scenario. And it looks like they can do it under this scenario. I don't know. I think we have two different issues going on here.
Yes. Do you want to move on?
I think we need to discuss this further,
Okay.
unless nobody has any comments.
I don't even know where to go to find an answer.
I am assuming from this and the comments that Dr. Miller made is that an RVT can give a rabies vaccination under indirect supervision as long as they're working as the agent of the veterinarian and has established the VCPR. Maybe we could ask him to comment as a public, open up the public comment at this point and get this articulated a little better. Is that protocol okay with Jessica?
We just have to open it up to all public comment, not just Dr.
Right, right. Okay, so the moderator is now opening it up for public comment.
Exactly. We've opened a Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon or click on the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send. So we do have a hand raised from Grant Miller. And Mr. Miller, I'm unmuting your microphone.
Thank you. I'm getting demoted as we speak. All right, so okay, so to answer your question, you are concerned about the fact that the rabies vaccine has been determined to be a dangerous drug, meaning it requires a prescription from a veterinarian in order to administer. Is that what your concern is in relation to the RVT appointments?
I don't think so.
What is your concern regarding rabies vaccines?
As we stated earlier, the issue of it being under indirect supervision and somehow a VCPR has been established either in person or virtually.
Okay, so are you talking about, so before we were talking about telemedicine, we were talking about a veterinary assistant, we were talking about telemedicine. Right now we're talking about RVT appointments. Which scenario are we talking about with you? What answer do you want right now?
Well, right now the RVT examination.
Got it. Okay, so you're not under indirect supervision because indirect supervision would require the veterinarian to have examined the animal first prior to delegating a task to either an RVT or a vet assistant. Now, as a side note, please keep in mind that we already have determined that either an RVT or a vet assistant can administer a vaccine, including a rabies vaccine, without the veterinarian being present. That's already solidified in law. We do it every day. But now let's take the scenario of SB 669. The veterinarian is establishing the VCPR utilizing the RVT as their agent pursuant to a protocol that's written. It doesn't matter that the rabies vaccine is a dangerous drug. If it did matter, we would be upset about the parasite medications because those are also a dangerous drug, meaning that they require a prescription, an order by a veterinarian in order to utilize them. So there's no hang up. You can do rabies vaccines with these RVT appointments. Just remember, the RVT is acting as the agent in establishing the VCPR. That's why this statute passed. That's what the purpose of the statute was.
So, Dr. Miller, is there any local ordinance that you're aware of in California that requires the veterinarian to give the vaccine?
No. No, and in fact, a common misnomer is that a veterinarian has to sign the vaccine certificate, which is also not true. The law actually states that a veterinarian, or unfortunately they use the word his designated agent, may sign the vaccine certificate. So there's nothing prohibiting, as long as the vaccine is done pursuant to a VCPR, which was the decision of this board, the correct decision of this board. As long as it's done pursuant to a valid VCPR, the veterinarian doesn't need to be there. The RVT can do it. They can even issue a certificate if the protocol indicates that that's something that the veterinarian wants done. Now, going back to telemedicine, the question regarding telemedicine is, could a veterinarian who's conducting telemedicine off-site direct a veterinary assistant to give a rabies vaccine after the veterinarian has established a VCPR via telemedicine? And it is plausible. Now, whether or not it's a good standard of practice to determine that a vaccine can be given based on a telemedicine appointment is subject to opinion. But is it plausible? Absolutely. Because if the veterinarian establishes a VCPR, they can direct their staff people to do things under indirect supervision, which means they're not present when it happens. So telemedicine is a different scenario. The veterinarian is the one doing the VCPR. 669, the veterinarian is saying, you, my RVT, you may establish the VCPR for me. And that can be for dangerous drugs such as, well, limited to rabies vaccines and parasite control medications. I'm beyond my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Are there other public comments?
I do not see any further requests for public comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
So as Dr. Grant's explanation, then the question is, do these answers satisfy our understanding of the rabies vaccinations? So there are two different scenarios, unless I'm missing something. There's the scenario of indirect vaccinations under 669, and then there's also the regulations that we put forward, where the task by the RVT is done in the hospital setting under direct supervision. So those two still exist, correct? Jessica?
I believe so, but I'm going to have to defer to Tara.
I mean, our regs, as we put forward last January, are still, and approved, are still moving forward, correct?
As far as regs, I'm really like out of that process. I don't think they are. I don't know, because, you know, we knew that 1399 was going through the legislative process, because, you know, we initially had a reg proposal, and separately we had our own legislative proposal to address telehealth issues and the VCPR. That didn't get picked up, so it seemed to me that the regulation was continued to move through because we weren't sure what would happen with the legislation. Now that 1399 is the law, I don't know what's going on with the regulation. Maybe Jeff knows more.
I'm so sorry. So actually, I think that this was something that was deferred back to the MDC to look at the impacts of 669. So I think the MDC will have to look at that reg package again to see the implications from 669 now that it passed.
Okay, I was not aware of that, so looks like it'll be on our agenda, because I can see the scenario of both of them, but okay, we'll make sure it gets on the agenda.
This is Sequoia. I have a comment about 8, the last paragraph. The board also notes, in the event that a canine animal patient is precluded from the administration of a rabies vaccine, only the veterinarian can make a determination that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life due to disease or other considerations that the veterinarian can verify and document. 2 things. I'm wondering about that word precluded rather than exempted, and also under this new, the 669, could the RVT act as the veterinarian's agent in making this determination? That would, to me, seem counterintuitive because it would be a matter of diagnosis. Am I correct on that?
I would think so.
I think that's what this is saying, is that only a veterinarian can make that determination. The RVT cannot.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to say precluded from, or, I mean, is that really the right word? Exempted for health reasons? Precluded to me doesn't mean exempted. But that's probably a legal terminology that one of our lawyers would have to answer for me.
Exempted is better.
Does exempt imply that the dog legally doesn't need a rabies vaccine because the dog is still, it doesn't, that statement that a veterinarian can sign that says a dog doesn't need a rabies vaccine or should not get a rabies vaccine because it has XYZ disease, it doesn't preclude it from having the enforcement action. I didn't state that very well, but Tara, we need a legal opinion here on the proper word.
I'm researching the text of the statute right now, and I always prefer to follow the text of the statute versus changing. And hold on a sec.
Or could make it more general that that a canine patient that's not recommended to receive a rabies vaccine because of health reasons or something like that.
The way that it's written in the health and safety code says, unless a licensed veterinarian determines on an annual basis that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life due to disease or other considerations that the veterinarian can verify and document.
Okay, so if a veterinarian determines the animal patient, a dog only, determines that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life, the animal would not be required to be vaccinated. Perhaps we just say it that way, because I'm not seeing precluded. I'm seeing there's a requirement that every dog procure its vaccination by a licensed veterinarian unless the veterinarian determines. So I wouldn't say that the animal patient is necessarily exempt from the administration, but I guess that potentially fits, yeah.
But it's an annual, needs to be reviewed by a veterinarian annually, whether it can go forward for another year without getting rabies vaccination due to the continuation of the medical condition.
So I think the focus here needs to be on that the animal patient is examined and there's something wrong with the animal patient such that administering the rabies vaccine would endanger the canine's life.
Right.
So we need to keep that focus on this, who has to make this determination that the dog should not get the vaccination. It can't be the RVT
Right.
who makes this determination.
Correct. How do we state this?
So perhaps you could do, the board also notes that in the event, and then strike, starting with through, no, sorry, I'm saying it's just strike a, and then that whole sentence through, so it would read, the board also notes that in the event a veterinarian can make the veterinarian makes a determination.
Well, but are we trying to say that the RVT can't? So we're starting off with the RVT is the one examining and administering. So I think here it's the board notes that in the event a canine animal patient is not healthy enough to receive the rabies vaccine. Let's try this because it's about the patient and there's something wrong with the animal patient. The RVT can't make any determination to exempt the dog from the vaccine, only the veterinarian can. So how does this look? A canine animal patient is not healthy enough to receive a rabies vaccine, comma, the veterinarian.
It sounds backwards to me. I think, the only the veterinarian is able to determine that a dog is not healthy enough to receive a rabies vaccine.
Okay,
Sounds
well
good
maybe
to
we
me,
just
but-
strike the first part.
Can I just ask why we need this in the thing?
Because somebody is going to say, well, if the RVT can establish a valid client-patient relationship, why can't they write a certificate exempting my dog from getting a rabies vaccine for 1 year? They're going to ask, because clients will come in and ask for it.
So can we strike?
Because I understand, but it's like, they can determine healthy pets for vaccination.
Healthy enough at this point in time, or not healthy enough to receive the rabies vaccine at this time.
And I feel like we're getting into the weeds on a question that is, right, so it's not relative to this question because I feel like we're spiraling on a question that half the people aren't going to read because one, it's long, and two, it's not that relevant because they can't do it, because honestly it would be easier to say, can an RVT ask the question that you're saying, can an RVT exempt a patient for a rabies vaccine? And the answer is no. And answer with, because they can only do for healthy pets. That's an easier question to answer
I like
than to
that.
go through all of this.
Go for it. Go for it. It sounds good.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like we're just getting in the weeds with a question like this. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to spiral. I feel like we're going down a road that it's very rare for this to happen. And
Not that rare.
Right. Well, yes, we're right, but
I think up in the first,
I think we should address it because it will help answer a question.
Yeah.
But I like
I think-
I like asking it from the perspective of what Christy said.
so I think in the first sentence or up at the top someplace, we need to state that an RVT can only establish a VCPR for these purposes on healthy animals.
I think Christy was suggesting adding another question right after 8. So right where it says in the middle of that last second paragraph, where it says the board also notes, instead of that, you go down to another question, the new question 9, and ask a question, is if the RVT, can the RVT, right, Christy, is that where you're going?
yes.
And RVT exempt, and I don't know how you
Well,
would.
no, can an RVT, oh, now I like totally lost my,
Yeah, how'd you say that?
can an RVT
Sign a rabies exemption?
sign a rabies exemption? And the answer is clearly just no, because they can only,
Rabies vaccination exemption.
And then the answer starts with no. And then strike out, the board also knows that in the event. Or maybe start it off with,
it's just clearly
in the,
no, it's
the
just,
board also notes that, and then start the sentence out with in the event.
I think it should just, that an RVT can only examine. I think that's how it should start.
Or no, only a veterinarian can make the determination that a rabies vaccine would endanger blah blah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really think it should start with what an RVT can do. An RVT can only do this. Because this is about what can an RVT do? What are we trying to get at? We're trying to get at what is it that RVTs can do with 669? Right? So an RVT, and how does the law, I have it here. So
I think you might be putting in too many words to this very specific question, though. The question is, can the RVT sign the rabies vaccination? The answer is no. Only a veterinarian can do that.
if you only answer that only a veterinarian, but I just think that it gets to, I feel like it should just be purpose of,
I like it. I like to make it simple. No, only a veterinarian can do that.
if we're going to stick to that.
Or we say SB 669 did not authorize an RVT to sign a rabies vaccination exemption,
Yeah.
period.
It's,
We
Yeah.
can also point to, because the following sentence about dogs in particular, it's about dogs.
Right.
This code section is about dogs. So as far as other animals, question mark, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole with
Right.
veterinarians. All we know is that 669 did not authorize signing vaccination certificates, exemption
Yes.
certificates.
Yes. Okay. I like that. So SB 669 did not authorize. That's what I like.
And, you know, I'm saying this for purposes of this meeting, 669 authorized examination, diagnosis, and treatment with vaccines and prophylactic medications. It didn't authorize examination, diagnosis, and determination that a patient is not healthy enough to receive the vaccine and then to sign a certificate. I mean, part of the exam is determining whether the animal patient is healthy enough. Absolutely, that's part of what the RVT has to document. They could turn away an animal patient from the vaccine, but they can't sign a certificate.
There. I think that's more clear.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Any other comment?
Sign a rabies vaccination exemption certificate or
It's not a certificate, it's just an
letter,
exemption.
statement.
That's a
Agreement?
It's not even clear on what it is.
Document.
It's actually like we write a letter. It's an exemption
Yeah.
letter.
Exemption letter, yeah. Thank you guys. Sorry.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
I think so.
9, what documentation is required to prove that the VCPR was established, which I guess is the new 10. These subdivisions list the minimum information to be documented in the animal patient's medical record to show the VCPR was established prior to the administration of the vaccine or anti-parasitic medication. I'll go out and read 10, which is 11. Can an RVT dispense annual vaccine or anti-parasitic medication to be administered by the client to the patient? An RVT is not authorized to act as the veterinarian's agent to establish a VCPR in order to prescribe or dispense any medication. To dispense a drug or medication, the veterinarian must establish a VCPR and prescribe the drug or medicine to be dispensed. An RVT can dispense a drug or medication previously prescribed by the veterinarian who established the VCPR. If a client wants a written prescription for a parasite control medications, how would the veterinarian accomplish this to satisfy VCPR requirements if the RVT has acted as the veterinarian's agent during the appointment? The ability of the RVT to establish the patient and establish the VCPR as an agent of the veterinarian is only authorized for the purpose of administering vaccines and anti-parasitic medication. To provide the client a written prescription for anti-parasitic medications, the veterinarian would have to establish the VCPR. If a client wants a written prescription for parasite control medications, can the veterinarian review the information collected by the RVT, meet the client and patient, and issue the prescription? No. The veterinarian could not rely on the examination performed by the RVT as an agent of the veterinarian. You want to stop there or let me finish?
Go ahead and finish.
Can an RVT perform a heartworm test and interpret the results to determine the health of the animal patient to inject heartworm preventative medication? SB 669 authorizes an RVT to examine the animal patient and requires the RVT to obtain data from the physical exam to diagnose and assess the animal patient's health to receive vaccinations or anti-parasitic medication. As such, it appears SB 669 authorizes an RVT to perform diagnostic heartworm testing, interpret the results, and if appropriate, inject heartworm preventative medications. Veterinarians are reminded that they are assuming the risk for all acts of the RVT related to examining the animal patient and administering preventative prophylactic vaccines or medications for the control or eradication of apparent or anticipated internal or external parasite, should be shites, plural, short of willful acts of animal cruelty, gross negligence, or gross unprofessional conduct on behalf of the registered veterinary technician.
Some heavy stuff there. Let's go ahead and see if the committee has any comments or concerns.
Yes.
Cheryl, it's Kathy. On number 13, so, and I think I know this, so the RVT could inject heartworm preventative medication after running a test, but could not prescribe Simparica Trio or pills, I guess, because only the vet can do that.
True. So yes, we've spent several hours on this.
I figured.
Yeah,
And it's because of the word administer
Yeah.
in the statute.
yeah. So Kathy, I went through this like forever. And so they can administer stuff in the room. So they're in the room, they can administer it and give it in the room while they're there. But, you know, even if it's an oral, but they cannot send it home. They cannot prescribe, they cannot, so because of verbiage, so.
So as a consumer, can I ask just a dumb question? Is there an injectable heartworm preventative medication that lasts for months, or is it a month
Months.
to month?
12 months.
That 12 months?
12
Oh, yeah.
months.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And so then after I also wrote some hypothetical scenarios. Did everybody get that? Because they weren't on the original. So there's 4 hypothetical scenarios that
We should probably, before we go into those, we
added
should
on
write
later.
it public,
Right.
yeah.
So we need to discuss this, yes, but I just want to make sure that everybody got those because some of the questions are answered in those scenarios.
I did not get those, but I'll look online again. Maybe I just didn't click on the right link.
Any other comments from the committee? Kathy, do you still have your hand up? Okay. If not, let's ask the moderator to open up for public comment.
Certainly. We would like to open the public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may click the hand icon to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 15-second warning. And we do have a request for comment from Grant Miller. Grant, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
All right, thank you. So can we go back to the rabies vaccination exemption question so that we can get that worded correctly?
Sure.
Can we see it on the screen? Because I don't have it. We don't have it out here in the virtual world because the only place the changes were made is there. Thank you. So, okay, if we're going to ask this question, we need to change the question because there is no such thing as a rabies vaccination exemption letter. The law, which for your reference is California Health and Safety Code section 121690B, says that a licensed veterinarian can determine that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life. So I think that that's what we need to say is, can an RVT determine that a rabies vaccination exemption is necessary? And the answer to that would be no. And I'm reading the rest of it. So it doesn't authorize them to sign a rabies vaccination exemption letter. There's no such thing as that. It can be a form. It can be a requirement for a written statement. It depends on each public health official. Keep in mind, the veterinarian is not the person who determines that the dog cannot receive a rabies vaccine. The animal health official for each county determines that. And so a veterinarian.
My apologies. To clarify, are we holding to a 2-minute time period?
No.
Not in
Thank
this
you.
section.
So
Thank you.
a veterinarian, their only obligation in relation to vaccine exemption is determining that the dog should not have the vaccine because it would endanger the dog's life due to disease or other considerations. But in 121690C, it says that the request shall be submitted to the local health officer who may issue an exemption. So the ultimate authority is left up to the local public health officer. It's tangential to the conversation, but I want you all to understand what Molly's Law actually says. moving forward. So I think we could change this around to say, can an RVT determine that a dog should not receive a rabies vaccination due to, or can they determine that a dog should be exempted from rabies vaccination due to adverse health consequences? And the answer is just no. And Christy is right. 669 does not authorize them to do that, period. But all the stuff about the letters and all that, that's not how it all goes, at least not everywhere. And then when we're done with this one, I want to move down to another one.
Can I suggest that we listen to the actual verbiage that he's saying, the wording, because he's
Sure.
got it in front of him? And I know we don't normally go back and forth during public comment, but he has it in front of him. Anybody on the committee agree with this or no? Or
Agree.
Yeah, go for it.
okay.
It
Okay.
says that a licensed veterinarian, which of course means a California licensed veterinarian, determines that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life. And I think that's there. It says some other things, but I think that's probably for purposes of asking a question the most appropriate. So you can know, it says the full sentence is, the licensed veterinarian determines that the rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life due to disease or other considerations that the veterinarian can verify and document. I don't think that for purposes of asking a question, you need to say that. You just need to say, can they determine that a rabies vaccination would endanger the dog's life for purposes of rabies vaccine exemption?
Yeah. For the purposes.
For the purpose of, there's only a sole purpose, for the purpose of rabies vaccine exemption. And then the answer is just no. It doesn't authorize them to do that. But it's not it's not like they're signing something that like puts a stamp of approval on it. It's that they're testifying, if you will, to the health officer. Hey, I'm the vet. I gave it. The dog had an anaphylactic reaction and almost died.
Can we just SB 669 does not give RVTs this authorization?
Does not authorize RVTs to do so.
Does not
Done.
give RVTs this authorization.
Yes, done. Period.
Okay. Tara, is this okay? Are you?
I changed the to A, can or can RVT.
Yeah.
I would probably take out A before rabies vaccine exemption. In the question on line 2, determine that, insert A there. Rabies vaccination, we should make that the same, right? Rabies vaccination or rabies vaccine, pick one.
Vaccination.
So I'm inclined to include the HSC reference, the citation at the very end. It's currently stricken in that paragraph. I'm inclined to include it because it helps everybody, you know, where is that requirement?
Right.
So I think that should be maintained, and we can take out paragraph 2, so it's just subdivision B. We could also do subdivision B, comma C. I mean, so it's a little bit more clear what the requirements are without going over what the requirements are.
Yeah.
So we could also put in front of HSC, insert the word C, S-E-E.
And my apologies, it appears we've lost audio. One moment.
We lost audio in the room or where? Okay.
Let's see, it might be back. All right, well, it sounds like everything's back up. Thank you for your patience.
As much as your fingers were crossed, I'm still here.
Oh, darn, it didn't work. Okay, I think Tara had something else there.
I wanted to add the word C before HSC in the citation.
I don't believe we put C in any other time that we put.
Right, and that's because we're typically quoting directly from the statute, but this one is different. We're saying SB 669 didn't give any authority, so we wouldn't be just automatically like quoting from the Practice Act. We're saying if you want to see where that whole body of law is, go over to the Health and Safety Code that explains what the requirements are. So that's why I'm saying insert the word C before HSC.
Okay.
Otherwise, this looks good to me. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Miller, you had something else?
Yes, so if you go down to the question about a veterinarian prescribing medication, yes, there. It would be number 13 in particular. So this may be more of a conversation that will be taken up with the board itself, but I would really like, so right there, number 13, stop, there. I would really like those in power to reconsider the answer to this question. And it's completely the board's will. It is up to the board as the enforcement branch to determine how they want to interpret the law. But I do believe that the law allows enough latitude to potentially make this question be yes. And it might be something where I appeal more to the board. But remember, a VCPR has been established. And if the veterinarian is reviewing the information collected by the RVT, and the RVT has communicated as an agent of the veterinarian with the client, I do believe a prescription could be made. And so I'll leave it there. I don't think it's something that the MDC could decide wholly on their own, but I do think it will be something that we will take up at the board level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public
All
comment?
right.
I do not see any other requests for public comment. Shall I, does look like committee member Usuri has her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question up where we added the reference or put the reference back in for the health and safety code. We listed C after that. And unless I'm looking at an old copy, I went to the one that was hyperlinked in the memo. It's only section B, subsection B, that references the exemption. It's B 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. C just talks about dogs under 4 months of age.
This is Tara. Let's go ahead and strike subsection C or subdivision C.
And then I guess the only other thing was, did SB 669 did not give, or should that be does not give?
I don't know if you're waiting on me for a response. Did is correct. It's in the past tense or past tense. Did anyone have any concerns about Dr. Miller's comments about FAQ 13 and whether or not a VCPR established by an RVT could be used by the veterinarian to prescribe?
So I guess that's a legal question, so I'm gonna leave that up to you and Christy, the reg person.
Christy wouldn't be involved in these because these are all FAQs interpreting statutes. She just does the regulations. I disagree with the statement. I think that this number 13 reflects the statute itself. To me, it's very clear that the veterinarian can authorize an RVT to act as the agent to establish a VCPR for the purpose of administering vaccines, prophylactic medication. That's it. So there's no additional information or authority where it says, and the veterinarian can prescribe. This was pretty tight language. So as far as the MDC members go, I would be recommending against changing the response to this and confirming that a veterinarian could issue a prescription based on the RVT's VCPR and examination. I don't believe that's what 669 authorized.
Hey, Tara, when we were working on regulations of where the technician was working in a premises setting under direct supervision, the veterinarian was in the facility doing something else, but the RVT has established the VCPR by protocol, the regulations that we wrote and I believe were approved by the board. In that situation, I had thought that the technician would go back to the veterinarian and that at that point in time, under direct supervision, the veterinarian could write a prescription for medication, for antiparasitic medication going home. Is that not true?
Right. That's true. That was a whole requirement because, we were recognizing that only a veterinarian can prescribe. So under our proposed text, we were accommodating the requirement under federal and other state law that a veterinarian is the only one who could prescribe and RVT cannot. So we were requiring the RVT to collect the data, do the exam, and then the veterinarian would review the information collected by the RVT to prescribe the vaccine or the medication that the RVT would administer. In that scenario, because the veterinarian is involved and does the prescribing, potentially the RVT could have dispensed. In 669, there's no mention of prescription and there's no real involvement by the veterinarian. The veterinarian's on call in most of the scenarios, but 669 did not accommodate that veterinarian prescription issue.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify in my mind that there was a difference and you have done that. So are there any more comments from the committee?
Yeah,
And
this
then
is Christy here. Hold on, there's Christy. Sorry, I was trying to get my unmute. I think the big question here is when it says meet the client and patient. And I think that's where the question comes in because, the client wants a written prescription. The RVT has acted as an agent for the veterinarian. And now the client has said, I want a prescription. They've acted as the agent. And now they're meeting what we had originally wanted was it's direct supervision. They're on the premises and the veterinarian's coming in and saying, I'm going to meet the client and the patient so I can issue the prescription. It doesn't say that they've established the VCPR themselves. It's just saying they're coming in and meeting the client and the patient. That's how I'm reading this.
I missed that. You're
On number 13, is that what he's saying? Is that where Dr. Miller was pointing out? If a client wants a
Well,
prescription, it says
aren't
meet.
we talking about 669 where the supervision is indirect? The RVT is out in the field doing these services, and it's not under direct supervision? Or am I missing something?
Did I read this incorrectly? And I thought this was only on, I thought he was asking about the one question, and I could be incorrect. So I thought he was narrowing it down on how we interpreted the one question. Where on number 13 on the screen.
Right.
So it says he's the veterinarian's then going in and meeting the client and the patient.
No, I do not understand that at all. 669 is, my understanding, not on the premises. The technician is out in the field. Am I missing something?
Yeah, no, 669, probably most of the time, the technician will be on the premises. It can
Right.
be either way.
It can be either way, but in this
Probably-
scenario, right, in this FAQ,
Okay.
am I reading this correctly?
I would say that if we're looking at the scenario where the RVT is on the premises and doing the examination and the doctor is in the building, then we're dealing with the regulations that I was talking to Tara about that we wrote in January and approved in January. Okay.
Right.
That's not my understanding is not 669.
Right. Well, it's question 13. Am I? It's question
So
number
it doesn't-
13. Because
it
it says
doesn't
that
say
the
on the
veterinarian
premises.
goes in and says, yes, because it says meet the client and the patient. Okay, it's old question 12. If you're looking at yours,
Yeah.
Okay.
that's probably where we're having the problem, Dr. Sullivan. I'm
Yes.
sorry. It's old question 12, where it says that the veterinarian then comes in, meets the client and the patient.
But the overriding thing is, does 669 allow for that?
No.
And it doesn't sound like it does, although it does sound like Dr. Miller will appeal to the board to potentially make some changes.
Right. And so
that's not up to us.
Right.
What I'm saying is under our regulations, they can do that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you, Dr. Sullivan, in the way that it was originally what you'd said, that answer would be yes.
Dr. Sullivan is referring to a proposed rulemaking package.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not current.
Not current.
These questions and answers are related to 669. So
I know.
anyway, I think I think we maybe need to look at this question a little differently and see whether we're dealing with in premises or off premises, because there's two different issues there.
But I think it's either way, the answer is no.
Yes, regardless, it doesn't matter where that's happening.
Correct.
Currently.
Under our proposed regulation, I thought Tara just said, you're saying a prescription couldn't be sent with the client?
Correct.
Yeah, so our language would have specifically authorized the veterinarian after reviewing the information collected to prescribe and dispense. That's not what 669 did. So our language is gone. we tried. Now we've got 669, and that did not have any provision for a veterinarian prescribing anything. The RVT is acting as the agent of the veterinarian. The veterinarian is either on site with direct supervision, but doesn't have to be standing over the RVT. Of course, that would defeat the purpose, right? Or the veterinarian is available through indirect supervision. So either way, under 669, an RVT is establishing this VCPR as the agent. I do not believe 669 authorizes the VCPR for any purpose other than the RVT specifically administering the medication. There's no provision in there that the veterinarian can utilize that data and that agency VCPR to start prescribing for dispensing. That's where I'm at.
I totally agree with that. I was possibly under the wrong assumption that our package is dead. I think they're two different issues, and I think that there is an advantage in what our original package is doing that I think should still stay alive. But that's up to the board to decide that.
Well, that's a regulation package, and that's not on the table right now.
Okay.
So these FAQs are with what is in force right now with 669.
Okay.
So we have to go with
I'm fine with all of that. I understand. I'm not arguing that. I think, look, I will discuss the agenda coming up later. Okay. Do we have any other discussion, or is it time for a motion?
There are hypothetical scenarios that were at the end of this section. Does everybody have those?
Yes, but I have a question, and I'm not really sure whether it's an appropriate discussion for here or not. I just attended a remote heartworm 2024 update, and they were it was Dr. Susan Little. She was strongly recommending against just doing a heartworm test, an antigen test, and because she explained why you could certainly get false negatives. So would this be a situation where this would come under hospital veterinary premise protocols in case the animal did test negative, but there was suspicion that it was a false negative? Because if the RVT injected heartworm preventative in a heartworm positive dog, there could be grave health consequences, even death.
So in my understanding in the current American Heartworm Society recommendations is that you do the SNAP test plus you go ahead and do the NOTS test. And that's what we do at my hospital. I didn't want to get into what kind of test you should do and how in depth the test should be. We're just talking about, in general, you need to do a test. And can the RVT do that test, or does it need to be the veterinarian that does that test? So that's what we were getting at, RVT versus veterinarian, or what could be both. So let's go back to, first of all, does everybody have the—
Hang on, Cheryl, just a second. Yeah, I understand, but it was not running the test, it was interpretation of. But I think my question may be, given your answer, is more appropriate for the hypotheticals. Thanks.
So does everybody have the hypothetical scenarios?
I think so.
Okay. So you can read the first part. Can John perform, John is the RVT, perform a heartworm blood test on Fido, and if negative for heartworm, inject a medication that prevents heartworm for 12 months? So yes, because this is administer, the critical word that's in in 669. The RVT can inject ProHeart specifically. So 669 says the RVT can examine the animal patient, collect data from the examination, diagnose or assess the animal patient, and administer vaccines and antiparasitic medications, which means that they can inject the heartworm preventative. Fido's last heartworm test was 1 year ago. Can John do a heartworm blood test, and if negative, dispense heartworm preventative medication? No. So you can read all that. Can John dispense heartworm preventative medication if Dr. Smith examined Fido 6 months ago, but did not dispense the medication because Fido didn't need a refill yet? Tara says the answer is no, unless John is dispensing a refill of the medication previously prescribed by Dr. Smith and authorized by Dr. Smith for a refill. If Dr. Smith in the above scenario did not dispense medication, but she made a notation in the medical records that Fido needed a heartworm test in 6 months and approved a refill of the medication, can John perform a heartworm blood test and dispense heartworm preventative medication? So again, Jessica and Tara and I have spent hours on this, and Tara says the answer is no. In this scenario, John will be performing a diagnostic test related to Dr. Smith's prior VCPR. So I believe Tara, I believe this is the law. I just don't feel like it's the right answer in the real world.
It's confusing, I think, is the more accurate term, because we went round and round on this one, and we don't understand it in the real world. It doesn't make sense to us.
To a lawyer's mind, I'm sure it makes sense.
It makes absolute sense, and we tried to wrap our heads around it, but it's doing it in relation to 669, but not in the real world, I think, is the problem. And we tried desperately to understand it, and it's really confusing.
Tara, I guess the best way to describe this is that this RVT VCPR is a box. It's by itself. It's not part of anything else. In this box, an RVT can only do certain things. Examine, diagnose, establish that VCPR as the agent of the vet, and then administer certain medications. That's it. So that box is impenetrable. So if the client says, I want to reach out through this box and grab, some medication to take home, that's not going to happen under 669 because it's the box. The client has to rely on the veterinarian at that point to prescribe so that the medication can be dispensed. And again, 669 didn't authorize, it didn't talk about the veterinarian relying on the RVT's examination to prescribe and dispense. So similarly, we've got these heartworm issues and testing and prior refills. I keep going back to 669 is a box, and there's only certain things that can happen there. I don't know if that helps you visualize it. I needed that. But yeah, I'm sure real world, it's like clients come in, one-stop shop. Hey, I want to take some meds home, get this, preventative going. But that's not what 669 authorized.
And I guess, but if John is everyday RVT and Dr. Smith authorized that medication, because it's previously prescribed, number 4 is a yes. Well, but they're an everyday RVT.
But in this case, in number 4, it wasn't prescribed before. If it was prescribed
Oh, yeah,
before,
but if it
honey,
was,
the
okay,
doctor,
yeah,
then you
and
can refill.
I'm sorry, number 3, sorry, I'm
Number
like, I
3.
go back to number 3. Yeah, because it's a previously prescribed medication.
Number 2, actually.
I don't even know where I am anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I guess that's where we go. It's not, so when does John not become in a box?
If the
Gets his
veterinarian
veterinary
has
degree.
dispensed the medication, you can refill it.
John is not in a box when he's relying on the veterinarian's VCPR.
But when relying on his RVT VCPR, he cannot he can dispense, he cannot prescribe. Was that what you're
He
trying to say?
cannot dispense
He
either.
cannot dispense to take away. He can
Administer.
administer. That's the word. Administer. Getting a little loopy here. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's my frustrating part is that in 3 and 4, Dr. Smith does have a VCPR.
And approved a refill. That's what I didn't understand.
Yeah, that's where it gets confusing with number 4.
Because if the vet approved a refill and did a VCPR, assuming a negative current heartworm test, then I don't see why the RVT can't dispense it.
I was part of the, actually, I wasn't part of, I participated in or listened to the CVMA's Zoom meeting on 1399 and 669, which was last week. And they spent an hour talking about 1399 and 669 between Grant and Dan Baxter. And then they had, after they got done talking for 60 minutes, they had 30 minutes solid of Grant going bam, bam, bam. 30 minutes solid of questions, and 90% of them were about this. So that's why sometimes I'm asked, why do we need hypotheticals? Well, this is why. They had 30 minutes solid of questions about all these scenarios. So FAQs really do help if we can get them out there.
4 just doesn't,
I agree.
it's not, it doesn't fit. Because Dr. Smith already has a VCPR. And it's related to what's asking to be done. So therefore, John does not need to establish a VCPR and doesn't need to go in the box.
But John is going to be performing a diagnostic test and interpreting the results of that test to determine whether to refill the medication and then dispense it based on the prior VCPR. That's the issue. Can you do that without
but that's done every
669?
day.
So we have Ms. Sheffeld's hand has been raised for quite some time, and then perhaps we can also open up to public comment, since I know that CVMA also had similar questions. Maybe they can share if our responses differed.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, what I was also a couple things, but for number 4, I feel the same way Christy feels. I believe that this is done routinely in practice. And what I would see as part of this would be something like in 6 months, repeat heartworm test. If negative, refill the medication. And so there's a direct order already for that RVT to do those things. So I don't see it having anything to do with the VCPR part of 669. But that's just the way I would look at that, though I understand you guys have talked about this at length. And then my other question was actually in number 2, when it says no medication can be dispensed, prescription or non-prescription, unless the DVM established the VCPR. And that was confusing to me because At my day practice, we had things like Frontline on the shelf, and anybody could dispense those, including a receptionist. The owner asked for it, and we provide it for them. So I don't know if that's outside the purview of this. I understand that 669 doesn't authorize prescriptions, but I'm not sure about an over-the-counter flea product kind of thing, and why it's included as non-prescriptions are included there. That's it.
I think somebody needs to answer her question. I would assume that a non-prescription item does not require a VCPR. Is that not true?
I asked that question specifically, and this was the answer I was given.
Well,
The
how
answer you
can
were
it when you can
given?
buy it at PetSmart?
Well, is that treatment that requires a VCPR? Yes, it is. It's treatment. And that's why you need a VCPR to administer any type of treatment or dispense treatment. You need a VCPR.
Non-prescription treatment?
If it's coming from the veterinary premises,
Tara, it's
isn't
at
that treatment?
the last sentence of number 2's answer is where, but that's about, yeah, no medication can be dispensed, prescription or non-prescription is, I think.
I can see something. Frontline, I agree. You shouldn't. That shouldn't be a problem. Some like omeprazole. You can get that over the counter, but I don't think any RBT should be recommending that. So it kind of depends.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was looking at it just as the parasiticides, because that's what 669 deals with, not with other over-the-counter medications. And I, don't think there's any heartworm prevention medication that's over-the-counter, which is what 2 was referencing. I was just, just the non-prescription part in there seemed odd to me because there are.
I was thinking about,
I'm
I was
sorry.
thinking about like fenbendazole, which I'm not sure is really prescription.
Okay.
Or parental, if those are really prescription, or I think they're non-prescription. Although I'm not 100% sure about that.
I think if you're using a non-prescription item, extra labeling, I think there's an issue there.
I think it's kind of, we're getting like, again, in the weeds, but it comes down to, it's non-prescription, it's not a prescription. Why does an why is an RVT held accountable for things that we should not be held accountable for? They can go buy it at PetSmart, but it's our fault that they can buy something at PetSmart. They can buy it over the counter. So
there are non-prescription things that an RVT should not be recommending.
But 669 doesn't cover those things. It only
Right.
covers vaccines and preventatives.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to 669. It has nothing to do with 669.
But it could. I mean, look, if fenbendazole and parental are non-prescription, then it does.
Okay, let's go ahead and move it to discussion with the public and see if we can get some more comments there.
This is the moderator, and we're opening up the public comment feature. If you'd like to make a comment, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you can tap the question mark icon, type the word comment, and hit send. We do have a request for comment from Grant Miller, and as my understanding, we are no longer keeping time on comments. Grant, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Thank you. So going back to question number 13 that I had mentioned that I would appeal to the board regarding the interpretation, I am withdrawing that. After listening to Tara's explanation, it and reading 669 yet again, she's absolutely correct. The law does not, this particular law does not permit a veterinarian to move beyond authorizing the RVT to administer in the exam room. Now, the difficult part is that when we put the regulatory package together that essentially got taken to be 669, our original intention was to permit that. But as Tara said, the steps that were involved that we had created in our reg package, some of them got removed when the statute was created. And when the statute was created, it removed the ability to do anything other than administer. And so we may have to take a look at the reg package to determine if there's anything the board would like to try to address on the regulatory side, but the reg package as it stands is essentially dead because 669 ran right over the top of it. And, you know, that's it. I mean, this is what we have now in statute. So for better or for worse, she's absolutely right. We don't, there's no authority. The protocols that the vet writes are for administration. It's episodic. It's meant to be in that room at that time. The protocols may very well differ if the veterinarian were deciding that they were providing a year's worth of medication to the animal. The type of testing that they might want, the type of exam they might want, that all might differ. But 669 doesn't address that. It only addresses what happens in the exam room for administration. So you will hear nothing from the CVMA on a challenge because Tara, thank you, Tara, for correcting. Now, in relation to the scenarios, we did not get scenario number 4 in our webinar, but we did get scenario number 2 quite a bit. And if we could put that up on the screen, I might be able to shed a little bit of light on where we were coming from with scenario number 2. So the prescription versus non-prescription, the part that you have to remember is that we have an entire overlay of FDA regulations that govern us in how we practice veterinary medicine. And we don't always think about them, but they really do play in because when you incorporate a medication, whether it's over the counter or not, into a treatment plan, it is considered to be a dangerous drug. So a banana could technically be a dangerous drug if you decide that you want the animal to take one banana twice daily for 7 days as part of a treatment plan for, you know, hypokalemia or whatever it's going to be. So the fact that they're non-prescription is irrelevant. When you're in the exam room, when somebody walks in off the street and grabs Frontline and leaves, that is different than them being in the exam room with a licensed professional mapping out a treatment plan on what they want you to do with your animal. The second you take the reins and do that, every single thing that you give to them has to be treated as a prescription drug or what we call a dangerous drug, whether it's over the counter or not. You have to label it. You have to put instructions on it. You have to give a client the consultation. Actually, scratch that. Consultation is not for OTCs. But if there's something that you incorporate in, whether it's prescription or not, while it's sitting out on the counter, you have to treat it if it's a prescription drug when it's in there. So here they are in the exam room. You give them their 12-month heartworm shot. You could tell them, you know, client, Mrs. So-and-so, you are very welcome to go get your flea and tick medication at anywhere if you'd like to. But if you would like to get it from us or have us write you some kind of a prescription to get it from a pharmacy, you will need to see the doctor in order to do that. And that gives them the options of what they want to do. But you can't say, well, it's over the counter, so let's go ahead and give you some flea and tick medication. And by you, I mean the RVT who's in the room. My final point is, let's please train ourselves to remember that this is not the RVT's VCPR. This is the veterinarian's VCPR. It's the veterinarian client-patient relationship. It's not the RVT CPR. So the RVT is acting as an agent, but the VCPR still belongs to the veterinarian at the end of the day. They just happen to rely on their staff a little bit to help establish it. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I do see a comment from Nancy Ehrlich. Nancy, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
I would also request that you put the question 2 back on the screen, because while I agree almost completely with what Dr. Miller just said, I think that none of this applies to the question that's asked in 2. The answer does not go with the question. The question says, can John do a heartworm test, and if negative, dispense heartworm preventative medication? I'm sorry, I'm not. I was reading that incorrectly. I was thinking of the other one. It was question 4, where I disagreed with that answer. That question 4 is where the RVT is just following orders, as Leah, I think, explained very adequately, and that she wrote in the medical record that he needed a test in 6 months. He is now performing that request by the doctor, and then she said and approved a refill of the medication, which he is then filling. So how is John doing anything other than following doctor's orders under question 4? That's the end of my spiel.
And I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Please.
Thank you.
Okay, what is the, yes. Christy.
I think the concern with 4 is this scenario occurs in practice every day. And so it's very difficult for us to wrap our heads around it, because it's a bad scenario. It just doesn't work. And that they already come in, and what happens already is Dr. Smith already instructs John to perform the test, reviews the results, and does the diagnosis and says, here, give the heartworm preventative, and authorizes the medication. So I think that it's a question that doesn't relate to 669 in a way that it's already happening. So the no is, the answer no doesn't relate, because we're trying to squeeze 669 into a box that it doesn't, into the 669 box. We're trying to squeeze something that's already happening into something that doesn't work. So the answer we want is yes, because we already.
My apologies again. We do seem to have lost audio in the hearing room. One moment, please. Thank you. Oh, and now it's back. All right. Continue. Thank you.
So I think that becomes the issue. And I hope that made sense to everybody.
This is Diane Sequoia. I want to point something out, which I've read page 11 many times, like everybody else. But this hypothetical scenario, go to the top and read the last sentence. John examines Fido, a new patient. Go down to number 4, and it says, Dr. Smith made a notation in the medical records that Fido needed a heartworm test in 6 months and approved a refill. So obviously Fido's not a new patient.
So
The doctor saw him 6 months ago.
so
Yes, John is operating under really is operating not under SB 669, but under Dr. Smith's VCPR. So I think we've kind of been talking about it at cross purposes, because Fido's not a new patient in number 4. He's an old patient, a return patient.
So we originally had these in a different order. Can we go back up to 3? So there is where, so question number 4, scenario number 4 is predicated on scenario number 3. So if Dr. Smith examined Fido 6 months ago, so 3 and 4 go together.
Right, but at the very top, it does very clearly say, I mean, we're leading these people, and that should be removed because it should only apply to 1 and 2. And
So for number 1, you need to know it's a new patient.
yeah, right. But we need to
number
be
2,
we need to
you
be
need to
clear.
know. Yes.
We need to be clear that this scenario up here, I mean, the author has authorized to perform this, that matters, but
Right. So we can, again, these got rearranged and rewritten. So before they made more sense from that question, from that standpoint. But we can rewrite that.
Thank you.
I've got an idea. We can just strike from that intro language, line 3, strike a new patient. So
For number 1, you need to know, and for number 1, they need to know it's a new patient. Otherwise, they're all going to go.
I agree. You'll just move that to number 1. So it'll read, John examines Fido and remove the commas and vaccinates him. So number 1 is, can John perform a heartworm blood test on Fido, comma, a new patient, comma, and if negative. So we're setting it up here that he hasn't been seen before, because 2 says his last blood test was a year ago. We don't know where that is, but it's, he's somebody's patient at that point.
Right.
So it seems like number 1,
yeah.
we only need to have the new patient language.
Yeah. So in 1 and 2, Fido is the new patient. In 3 and 4, he's been seen by the doctor, Dr. Smith.
Do we need 4?
I think we need 4.
That new patient language in 2 doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I'd take that part out.
So it's
And I don't think you need to designate it at all, because Fido's last heartworm blood test was 1 year ago. Do you want to set up here where that test was done? Some other premises?
He's still a new patient. So obviously he had the test 1 year ago somewhere else.
Is that pertinent? I mean,
is it relevant? It's not relevant.
Yeah, it is relevant.
Why?
Not really, because in 1, it's an injection. In 2, 3, and 4, it's dispensing. That's the issue.
That's the issue. So that's why.
So if he was giving an injection in 2, 3, and 4, would that not be okay?
Yes. Yeah, that's the point, that they can administer at any time. But so the first one is injection. The second one, all the others are dispensing.
Right.
Some variation on dispensing and whether it's been seen by the veterinarian or not.
Well, I think we're at a dead end here unless we can come up with something striking. It's definitely not a dead issue. I think it's going to move forward. The question is whether
can we move forward without the scenarios right now and move on with
that's the question.
The FAQs and still do that and work on the hypothetical scenarios?
Let's do this. Let's discuss a motion for the Q&As first. separately, and then we can go from there.
So I would move that we accept the FAQs as amended today, removing the hypothetical situations or hypothetical scenarios to move to present them to the board.
Sequoia, I'll second that.
I did not read that.
To clarify, the motion would be to recommend the board approve FAQs for SB 669 without the hypotheticals as amended today. Publish the FAQs on the board's website and disseminate the FAQs to stakeholders.
Yes, accepted that motion. I was scrolling to try to get to it. Thank you. Hopefully that friendly amendment for the motion is accepted.
And Dr. Sequoia,
Okay, just to clarify, did you say to send it to the board or to put it on the website?
both. So the motion would be to recommend the board approve the FAQs as amended today without the hypotheticals, publish the FAQs on the board's website, and disseminate the FAQs to stakeholders.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing you very well. So is that posting it after the board approves it or after we approve it?
On page 1 of the memo, it says to recommend the board approve the FAQs, publish the FAQs on the board's website, and disseminate the FAQs to stakeholders. So the way that the recommendation is, the board approves first.
Okay, good. All right, and we have a second to that motion, Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Okay, discussion from the committee members.
This is Kathy, and so just to confirm the timing, since the board meeting, unfortunately, tomorrow and the next day had to be canceled, it will come up in the April board meeting. And upon
Correct.
approval at that point, could be posted. So it's a bit of a delay. Okay, thank you.
Well, and potentially the MDC could reevaluate the FAQs at their April meeting. So the board can consider both during the April meeting after the MDC meeting.
And including the hypotheticals, I suppose.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Marie. I think we have one more amendment that we need to make. I think when we split 8 and made that new number 9, we lost the reference to HSC 121690 at the end of 8. And I think that would still be helpful as a reference to people.
Ms. Pulaski and Dr. Sequoia, do you accept that amendment?
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Could you repeat that, please? Jessica?
Yeah, so Ms. Essery is suggesting that we add in HSC section 12190 subdivision B as the reference. So I'm asking if Ms. Pulowski and you, Dr. Sequoia, if you agree with that amendment and include it in your motion.
This is Tara, can I make a statement first? So HSC 121690 is specific to canines, and this whole paragraph is just saying, hey, there's some other, laws that may be pertinent to the situation regarding rabies control. So I think that citing to this particular statute is not very helpful for this paragraph. I think it's necessary for question number 9 because that's very specific to dogs. but for the end of 8, this is just rabies control in general, and we're just saying, hey, there may be some other laws out there in your local county, and also DPH regulates this area. So I don't think that just this one site to 121.690 is helpful.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood and thought you said we lost 121.695 when I looked at it, and I was very confused.
121.695 is in the first paragraph.
Yes, I see it now. I was scrolling.
But I don't think we need any citation to HSC in the second paragraph.
Yeah, if you feel it isn't necessary, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't losing any clarification that might be necessary for people as a reference.
Thank you.
So I accept the new motion to reject that.
And does the second also?
I do it in the second paragraph of number 9. I think it should stay in the first paragraph of number
It
8.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it's staying.
I accept it.
Okay, I think that's clear. Any more comments and questions from the committee? If not, let's go ahead and open the for public comment. Moderator.
This is the moderator. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each person will no longer be limited to any particular amount of time. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close public comment?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call for the vote.
Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Ms. Essery,
Yes.
Ms. Bowler,
Aye.
Dr. Grant,
Yes.
Dr. Lazarchuk,
Yes.
Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia,
Yes.
Ms. Shefelt,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. What's our time frame? Do we have time to do agenda item number 8?
Yes, it's the
Jessica.
the board because it says until conclusion of business, so we can continue.
Okay. So item 8, update and discussion from the complaint audit subcommittee, Dr. Sequoia and Dr. Waterhouse.
Dr. Sequoia, did you prepare anything?
I thought the memo pretty much said it all, since we're not making any recommendations for action. This is a information only update. What about you, Dr. Waterhouse?
We did meet and I was given an introduction into the functions of the committee. And in the meantime, we've evaluated 4 cases. And so I'm glad to be on the committee and look forward to more work.
Okay, any questions or comments? So we'll accept that report. Jessica, future agenda items and meeting dates.
Sorry, we do have to take public comment on that agenda item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you have any comment on the discussed item, you may look for the question mark icon and type the word comment in the text box, or you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comments. Shall I close that for now?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that leads us to action item 8. I'm sorry, 9 is the future agenda items and meeting dates.
Well, the future meeting dates are posted on our website through 2025. We have April 16th, 2024, July 23rd, 2024, October 15th, 2024, January 14th, 2025, April 15th, 2025, July 15th, 2025, and October 14th, 2025. So far, the MDC will be discussing again the hypotheticals that were in SB 669. They'll also be looking at the impacts of 669 on the pending rulemaking related to vaccinations. They'll also be looking at the proposed regulations for alternate premises and building standards, and potentially based after the April meeting, if the board approves the new strategic plan, there will be multiple topics coming to the MDC after that.
All right. Any comments from the committee? We don't open this for public comment, do we?
Yes, we do.
All right. Moderator, could you please? Oh, yes.
Dick,
Certainly.
I just wanted to ask Jessica to confirm all through 2024, at least we're virtual meetings. Is that correct?
Until
Based on,
further notice, so it's because of the expenditure freeze right now. If I had to guess, it'd be through 2024, potentially longer, but it's until we hear otherwise.
okay, thank you.
Someone else have a comment too? Okay, then moderator, could you open it up for public comment, please?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a suggestion of a topic for a future meeting or any comment on dates, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Any comments on future topics or dates? I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that?
Please, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, motion for adjournment.
We don't need a motion.
All right, we are adjourned.
Bye,
Thank you, everybody.
everyone.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. It's a
Bye,
long day,
everybody.
but thank you.
Very
Good
long
meeting,
day.
Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks. I'll
Tara.
miss seeing you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And this meeting is now closed. Thank you.